welcome all of you who have joined us today. I think most of us know what the topic is at hand, but even then, I would like to set some context. We know that generative artificial intelligence and has been pretty much the buzzword of late. And one of the, you can say, the lowest hanging fruits is generating new content, audio, code, images, etc. And perhaps one of the industries where it has immense impact is the news, media, and content industry. And largely that's because of the volume, repetition, and maybe the replicability of processes which help such interventions gain scale as well as monetization. Some housekeeping. I think during the course of the conversation, you might see some of your questions which you had posed in the community getting answered. If not, we come between Karan and I will try to make sure that they get answered towards the end of this conversation. So without further ado, let me pose the first question to Shaurya. And Shaurya, thank you for taking the time out. I think let's go back to the very basics of a bit about your journey and what brought you to this space in particular. Why did you choose this space to be an entrepreneur?
So Koreel, I've worked for about 12 years before started Justbaat and was part of the team which built Wynk. In fact, I was the first product manager at Wynk Music back in 2012 and was with Airtel Bharti SoftBank ecosystem for about 7.5 years. Did multiple product roles within Airtel, mostly on the non-telco digital side of the business, and launched the first Airtel loyalty program, and then was part of the CEO's office as well. In my last role, I was the business head for Airtel Ads. And then finally got an opportunity to move to Singapore and join a company called Zenius Education. Zenius was an edutech company, the largest ones in Indonesia. And I joined them right before the pandemic. And when pandemic hit, it was one of the positively hit sectors where, thanks to the pandemic, without doing much, we started getting influx of users. So if you were to, act fast as a product to make sure that the users that are coming in stay with you, you have to, of course, get the product right very, very quickly. And Zenius was, growing, it was shaping up. So we had very less time at hand. So one side of the business was the UI, UX, and the overall technology part of the product, which was being taken care of. The second side of the business was creating content and getting the user journeys and user flows right so that the learning curve improves. And this is where I was anchoring things. And net, it required more content to be created. Because of the pandemic, the studios in the office had to shut down, and we used to use studios to create content. We were literally relying on the teachers now who had to act as creators and create all the content by themselves. And that's where they were using their phones to shoot videos and then upload them finally on our LMS, and every video that was being shot just came out extremely random and different. It was almost impossible to manage the throughput and the sanity across the platform. And that's where we started looking at ways, opportunities, technologies, how we can sanitize or manage the supply chain in a proper way. And that's where I realized that, creative ops, especially around video creation, is completely broken. Also, to my utter surprise, 4 million videos are being created every day, right? And every bit of creative ops that exists today is manual. I mean, there is some automation, but only up to 5 to 10%. 90% of the task is still manual. So just to create, edit, and upload one video, it would typically take around 30 to 40 minutes. And when I say one video, I mean typically a video average is about 2 minutes. So anyway, just to get 1 minute of video clipping right, anyway, it takes about 20 to 30 minutes today. Right? And that too, when the world has advanced so much, everybody is like on videos, creating videos. So this is a problem statement that, that plugged into my head back in that time. And then when finally, started Justbaat, there were a couple of problem statements that we were dabbling with. And this came out to be the most prominent one. And that's where we said that, the LLM and NLP algorithms have advanced to a certain point, and we could probably solve some parts of the business using creative ops. So that's how we started off. But when we started going deeper into technology, understanding it a bit more, customizing it, repurposing it, we realized that we could literally automate the entire workflow end to end, where we can flip the equation. So instead of having 5 to 10% automation and 90% manual effort to create videos, we can literally flip the equation where 90% of the effort can be automated using generative AI and 10% could be manual, so that we make sure that there are enough controls and enough authority of the humans of around the videos that are getting created. So that's how this started off.
Thanks. I think I will come back. You raised two important points. One was the process, and one was the human aspect. I will touch upon the human aspect later because there's been a lot of literature around it, as we know. Let's talk about the process first, because that's what dictates your success and your scale. So, if you can, for the benefit of the audience here today, talk a little bit about how unique is this process in the news industry, which makes it easy or at least viable for you to build a scalable model on top of it.
So of course, actually, I would just take a step back and just talk about why did we choose news to start off with, right? And then quickly jump onto the process. So effectively, when you automate stuff, automation has to help people scale, or automation has to come in where there is a lot of activity which is happening manually, right? Now, news and broadcasting is an industry which was creating content 24 into 7, and the entire process was manual. So, and also there were almost similar set of processes going on. And this is a huge industry in itself, right? So every news channel or every news publisher would have similar set of reporting, similar set of processes, similar set of formats which are available. I mean, for example, everybody does morning bulletins. Everybody does top 20, top 10, top 20, top 30 news of the day, right? So formats were similar. So that's why news became an obvious choice. Now, the process, right? The news creation process or collection process is similar to any other information gathering process, but then this is to be done at scale, and it is with a limited time set because news is short-lived. The average age of a news article is only 24 hours, right? Beyond that, it becomes irrelevant for the most part. So it has to be done like a very, very rapidly scaling, robust watertight supply chain. And that's where we thought that AI could come in. So typically, if you were to report news, how does it happen? So there are field journalists out there in the field which are collecting news. So anything to everything which they feel is newsworthy is collected through their smartphones. Photos are clicked, videos are clicked, something is scribbled onto a WhatsApp or a or a mail body, and then it is sent across to the desk. Anything which is newsworthy. So right from Kutte ne billi ko panja mara to Modi said something, right? Anything could be reported. And that's what the job of a field journalist is. So once these news snippets pieces come into the desk editor has to decide which ones to pick and which ones not to pick. So typically in an hour, thousands of such news pieces would be flowing into a desk editor's desktop or a machine. And that's where that decision is done by the editor. And the moment they decide to air or pick up or report a story, they decide the format. Is this supposed to be anchor front or no? They decide the medium or the channel. Is it supposed to be TV worthy, or is it supposed to be print only? Is it supposed to be digital only? If digital, like Instagram or YouTube or Facebook, which channel? And then and from there on they start rewriting the script, because typically the script is not that well written by the field journalists because they are not well trained in the writing skills and all. So they literally have a scripting team which recreates the script, sets the narrative, and that's when, let's say, from there on, the script is supposed to be reported on a channel, and it is supposed to be anchor fronted. So it will go to the studio guys will click it, the anchor will front end the story, the animations will be done real time. If at all the studio is extremely advanced, if not, then the anchor clipping will be done. Then the assets will be given to the video editor. That person would merge it post production, and then finally the clip would be submitted for airing. So this is the entire process which almost happens at real time, and typically 30 to 40 minutes of lag is observed from the time of reporting to the time of airing. And this becomes extremely challenging for extremely newsworthy events. For example, something at a national level happens which has to be reported in a very breaking way. Still, it would take about 10, 15, 20 minutes to be reported because of the supply chain process which is in place. For example, elections or anything which is live worthy, it takes time to get all of this right. So typically elections is where they call in a lot of people, third party folks also, to make sure it is almost live or near live. So that's where we said that we from creating the script to the time the story is aired or published, the entire workflow is something that can easily be automated using generative AI if somebody goes deep into the processes. That's what we did. We went deep into the processes, we understood it, and every aspect of the workflow today has been automated by our AI, which co-pilots with the editor. So editor is empowered enough. Basically, we've made the life of the editor simpler by creating this entire generative AI workflow.
Thanks. I think just for the benefit of the audience, I'll just add a little bit of context from my previous of the many years ago when I was heading a newsroom. Is that you are judged against your competition on the basis of every 5 seconds who has broken a news first and who gets it to air first. So I think in that context, Shaurya's hypothesis of 30 minutes to 40 minutes lag is a huge value add that he's doing to the newsrooms over here, and definitely making the life of an editor much more simple. But Shaurya, I must ask you, the life of the editor might be made simple, but we've all observed that in the last several years, the core business model, that of advertising in the news industry, is kind of volume led and is broken. And most media companies are even struggling to uh, make even barely make margins. So in that scenario, what value add, what revenue proposition, uh, what is your revenue proposition to them? Because they have to be getting that kind of a tangible benefit out of it in order to either share revenue with you or pay you in some other format. I don't know what it is that your revenue generation sources are. So I'm pretty sure everybody would want to know those revenue generation sources.
Absolutely. So, uh, see, effectively, of course, media houses are stretched on revenues like any other businesses for most of the erstwhile businesses. Uh, However, it's a huge industry. Right? It's a $300 billion industry. People spend money to create content. Even the smallest media house, forget about the $1 billion. Even in India, the smallest media house, the smallest content production house, which is operating, let's say, in a state and is reasonably known, would spend anywhere around 200 to 300 CR in a year just to create content, right? And this is where their business models are bleeding. Their growth rate is stagnating. Still, they are supposed to spend this much amount of money, and this entire process is manual. So there is no way they can reduce the amount of money spent. In fact, it's actually increasing. The cost is increasing year by year. This is where technology comes in and subsidizes the cost, right? So today, let's say if they spend 100x to create content, we bill them X amount to build content. We bill them X by 10. That is what we bill to them, right? Versus our cost to create the same content or the same quality of content that they would have done manually is X by 100. So there is enough margin play that we have. We are able to reduce their cost. We are able to add speed to their processes. And that's how the value add comes in. And hence we get paid.
And so what is the you can say uh, guard rails against your, let's say, business model or something? I mean, because there is some way you can say that technology is not the moat, but maybe something else, because there are many other companies who are trying this. So how would you kind of respond to that question? Or
No,
maybe even a tech team of a fairly large media house, or maybe they could hire somebody to do it. So how would you answer that question?
No, absolutely. See, technology is not a mod, right? And technology cannot be the mod, especially in the case of generative AI, because every day, every day something new is coming up. Every day the technology is just becoming better, and it has to get better. There is no question there. So tech can't be a moat here. The moat that we have is actually threefold. One is the verticalization or the hyper focus of news and broadcasting in our current business format. I mean, we could branch out to other verticals, but not today. We are very clear that for the next couple of months, years, weeks, we are just focusing on news and broadcasting uh, and growing this business vertical. There are enough reasons why. We can talk about that later, but that's our focus. So one is the verticalization part of it. So our entire focus, when we say our processes, our teams, our content formats, the way we report, the way we build the technology is for to enable news only. It's just to make it better and better. So we literally work extremely closely with the current clients that we have. We've got five of them. Most all the big enterprises, in fact, all the five top media houses of the country are our clients right now, and we literally work very closely with them to make sure that the product is polished enough and ready and satisfies their needs. So one is the verticalization, which is the bot. Second, because we are verticalized, our LLM model has also been trained just to serve news, right? So the way you have to add assertiveness in certain words, right? The way you have to modulate a certain words, the way you have to highlight a certain words, right? Has been made sure by the LLM model that it exists. Just to give you an example, right? So let's say you're talking about something related when you're talking about a leader. If at all it is Hindi, then by default, depending upon the narrative or the tone of the story, the acronym for that specific politician could be added by the LLM itself, right? The pronunciation of the word, which is possibly difficult in the usual things, would be made sure that it is spelled properly. For example, matgadana, jangadana. Now, these words are extremely commonly used in Indian Hindi lingo when it comes to news reporting. But if you see the current models which exist, there are enough language models which exist. Jangadana, matgadana, these words are not pronounced that well. So, and there are a bunch of such words. We've literally been able to collate and create custom sets of thousands of these words in just 4 months of our operation, right? Since we started going out there in the market that our tech is ready, please deploy it, try it out. So within just with that, we've been able to get these like thousands of such words, right? Thousands of such custom sets created. So second mode is the custom LLM that we built. So assuming that people are not coming in at least for the next couple of more months, we will have enough lead time with such custom sets being available with us. So tomorrow, let's say if somebody stands up and says, "Yeah, I want to start solving for news and broadcasting," probably Justbaat is the only one here. Why don't we also do it? We will have 8 to 10 months of lead time with us, bare minimum, in which we will have thousands of words specifically trained to make sure that news is delivered the way it is supposed to be. Right? So for somebody else to catch up, for example, in a regular LLM model, if you write 1971, it will say 1971, which is technically correct. There is no problem there. But if you get 1971 to be read by our English model, it will say 1971, right? Or in Hindi, it will say 1971, which in most of the other English models won't be the case, right? So how did we achieve it? We built a feedback loop. So in our tool itself, the editors can mark, highlight, the wrong pronunciation, the correct pronunciation, and this is how we've been able to create such custom sets. For every media house also, we've been able to create different custom sets. For example, there is a very popular media house which calls Modi G. Most of the media houses don't, right? So for them, we've been able to create this custom set of Modi G, right? So such activities which are extremely micro customized for them have been done by us. So tomorrow, plugging us out will be difficult. Secondly, we've also been, because we are so hyper focused on news, there are a couple of CMSs or content management systems which are fairly legacy and are used by a lot of media houses. So we've been able to get our APIs ready to be integrated to them as well, so that the end-to-end workflow is seamless. So that's the second mode. And the third mode that we have effectively is the way we are operating in the market. We literally, at least for now, we make sure that every process that we have is married to the process of the media house, and we are adding value at every step, every point, right? So based upon these three, for example, when we create an avatar, that avatar is custom created for the media house itself, and that's not being used. And typically, that avatar is also now popularized by the media house because they understand the power of AI. So, plugging us out tomorrow or getting somebody in to do it for them will be difficult unless and until we do something which is extremely wrong. So that's the mode that we've been able to build, at least initially. That's the defensibility that we've been able to add.
Thanks. Would you be at liberty to mention the top five houses that you were saying who have partnered with it now?
Certainly. So we are working with the Times Group, which is the largest media house of the country. We are working with ABP Network. We are working with Amar Ujala, and we are working with Hindustan Times, Dainik Jagran, and we've just signed Odisha TV as well, which is a regional media house, but reasonably big, and News First Karnataka, again a regional media house, but reasonably big.
Okay. And are these still kind of pilot engagements, or have they signed up with you multi-year, and therefore you have this visibility of earnings and revenues of the business?
So apart from Amar Ujala, everything is paid. Amar Ujala is the only pilot which is going on, and we'll keep on piloting with them until June 2023 because that was the first client. But barring that, each account that we have signed on is a paid one.
Okay. So if you could, I mean, we spoke about, we spent a lot of time on your business, but I think for you to have reached this level and for you to have acquired some of these marquee clients, you couldn't have done it alone. Can you talk a bit about the team and your partners in this process?
Absolutely. So we have a team of 10 people, 7 engineers and 3 non-engineers, including the co-founders. My co-founder, Amandeep Kamboj, is a brilliant technology guy. He's a second-time entrepreneur. Aman and his couple of friends started one more company right out of college. So these guys went to IT Ropar, and in IT Ropar, government of Haryana came in back in 2011, and they wanted the kids to consult them, advise them to make their processes more digital. So Aman and a couple of his batchmates started advising the government, and while advising, they started realizing that why only consult? We can literally build the stack ourselves. So these guys built the stack, deployed it on a couple of departments, and finally TCS came in and acquired whatever they had built. So they got a very small exit, but reasonable for them at that time. uh, so that's someone. So he came down to Airtel in 2014 and joined the Wynk team. And I was the product manager at Wynk when he was the engineering manager. That's how we tango. So we've literally spent time building Wynk for about 2.5 years. Then Aman was at Airtel before Justbaat happened. He was the engineering head for Airtel video platform called Airtel Extreme. And then he was the engineering head for, in its last fall, he was the engineering head for Airtel Financial Services, where these guys use AI/ML algorithms to generate a credit score for the non-bankable areas. So that's someone. Then we also have two more individuals. One is Akshat Agarwal. He's the head of product. Akshat was part of the founding team of InShots and Glance and Front Row. Now he's with us building Justbaat. And Ashutosh Singh. Ashutosh is a star engineer. He was part of our team when we were building Wynk. And when we started Justbaat, he decided to join us. So that's the core team that we have, and then we have a bunch of freshers for whom Justbaat is literally the first job, and they're working with us. So that's the 10 folks that we have.
That's great. I'm going to ask you a question which is often perhaps not as explicitly asked because we all like to focus on metrics, on monetization, on future roadmaps, etc. But coming coming from, let's say, a background like an Airtel, which is siloed, large corporate, to break out into entrepreneurship, A, how tough was it? And B, did it give you any unique insights on how to develop business for your own venture? Because most of the clients that you're targeting are also large corporates who also have equally siloed decision making. So how do you approach that? Because it can't be easy for you to just walk in and say that, hey, there's a product, buy it.
No, so absolutely. So actually, before Justbaat happened, I was fortunate enough to be a part of Zenius Education, which was a pre-Series A level company when I joined them, and it literally grew like crazy thanks to the pandemic. So I already had my own set of cultural shock moving from Airtel to Zenius, right? Because at Airtel, when you work for a large organization, for example, when we were building Airtel's loyalty program, right? Uh, if we were to get promotions done, we had a brand team in place. If we wanted to get installs going, we had a growth marketing team in place. If we wanted to get the voice of the customer, we had a marketing research team in place. All we need to do was, as product managers, product head, go to the specific department, do a meeting with their boss, get a spot assigned, and get things done. So you never have to think, "Ye hoga kaise?" Right? The only thought was कि ये करना है. The only claim to fame was that let's do this. How will it happen? Where will the money come from? What is the budget? Honestly, were not priority areas for us at all when we were at it. Fast forward Genius, when I joined them, pandemic happened, installs are coming in, content banana hai. And everybody was looking at me and I was like, content banana hai, okay. How do we get this going? What's the budget? Do we hire students? People are like, there is no budget. You have to get the content in place. So it was a massive shocker. It was a great learning curve. I literally got paid to become an entrepreneur at Genius. Right? I learned how to run a company, an actual company, in my 2.5 years of run with them. And hence Justbaat was easier. But even with that, it wasn't that easy. Right? When I started Justbaat, I started off, yeah, product to bani jayega. We'll get the money, we'll become a unicorn, everything will be a breeze. But it never happened that way. It was extremely, extremely difficult. Every day, we are contemplating whether what are we doing, why are we doing. It's been it's been extremely unplanned, unstructured, hasn't gone the way we thought, but we've been at it and we are so happy that we did this. This was the best time to do it, right? Because at least personally, I am getting older. I started getting some gray hair. So this is the right age to do it as well, because after a couple of years, it wasn't possible for me to do it personally. So I'm really happy that I'm doing this now.
Yeah, gray hair. We can say. I mean, I don't think we should be focusing on our gray hair. We are all young at heart. But I think now again, I'll switch track back to, you can say, more business specific and product specific questions. So how deep is your focus on continuous R&D and technology development? I mean, obviously, this particular iteration of your product is definitely not the end of it. So, what is your roadmap that you see, especially in the next 18 to 24 months? Are there more languages that you're planning, or anything in between this wide range of questions that I have posed?
No, absolutely. So right now, see, generative AI at this stage is a very macro level technology. Right? Somebody has built something which is an extremely good technology, which could have umpteen number of use cases. But what are those use cases? People haven't solved for it. It's literally at the stage where somebody is like built a wheel. Now, using that wheel, you can build a car, you can build a cycle, you can build an aeroplane, you can put it into an engine, build build a proper industry. So you can do multiple use cases with that tech, right? So it's at a very very exploratory level. However, most of the deep research to build the basic level of technology is happening in the valley. People are spending billions of dollars to get that, right? But then there is a lot of research required over top of it to customize the use cases. That's where middlewares and application layers like Justbaat would come in. So we are literally taking the macro level research and customizing it for a specific use case, and that's where all the R&D is happening at our end. So we've literally spent a lot of time to understand this tech, to customize this tech, and bring this technology to the market. So when you talk about R&D, we are continuously researching. For example, right now, if you see the models which were available on the internet for uh, lip syncing or getting the deepfake through, was literally only about the lips, or basically every model would just reconstruct this area, right? Everything else remains the same. But what we've done is we've literally spent some time and now we are able to add a head nod to our model, right? We've been able to add frowning to our model. And frowning is extremely important for news, for example, right? It might not be that important if you are doing a product demo, but news mein frowning is used very extensively. So this is something that we keep on researching, we keep on developing, we keep on customizing for ourselves. So from a product roadmap point of view, we've not been able to achieve even 1% of where we want to be today. Today, we have been only been able to automate the workflow at a very macro level, and we've been able to get some level of videos going, to be honest, right? But there is a bunch of customization that we can do. There are so many micro use cases that we can solve for. So there are a lot of things planned. So, for example, most of the research which is happening primarily for English, at the best Hindi. Nothing is happening for the regional languages, and nothing would happen for the regional language at least for the next couple of months, if not years, right? This is where application players like us would come in. For example, we've literally spent time to build models for Bangla, Marathi, Odia, and Times of India has helped us for it. Times of India has actually given us 2,000, articles and voice clippings or video clippings, raw video clippings to us for us to get it into our model and train it and learn it better. Their editors have given us a lot of feedbacks through the tools that this pronunciation is not right, fix it. This is not right, fix it. So we've literally spent time with them to get things right. And that's where our models are probably better as compared to the others. Right? We've built custom sets for them. So this research at our end is a completely continuously ongoing process, and we are at it. So we are literally researching at every front. When you create a video, you have to make sure that the background is perfect, the avatar is perfect, the pronunciation is perfect, the scripting is perfect. So the research is literally aimed at every level of video creation, and that's what we are doing today.
Interesting, you mentioned that you barely have scratched the surface, and I would like to double click on that 1 second, because it would be very informative for our audience also today to know some to get some sense of how deep this market is. And I remember us talking about it prior to this call, that the market is huge in various languages. So if you could leave the audience with a sense of some numbers of how big the market is from both, let's say, the number of media houses or publications, as well as monetary revenue market size kind of numbers. So and which is that particular section which is most relevant to you, and therefore you could kind of have some hope of getting market share out of it.
Surely. So if we talk about, and I have these bottom-up numbers for India only. I do not have global numbers, unfortunately. Top-down, of course, I have global numbers.
So I think India is sufficient for now. We are 1.5 billion people, so
Yeah.
that's
So if we talk about India specifically, there are 1,000 plus registered news broadcasters in the country which have the license to air or broadcast news, right? There are about 100,000 plus digital publishers registered, and there are 100,000 plus print publishers which are registered in the country. So that's the overall market size, right? 250K individual organizations just creating content around news, media, broadcasting. Right? So that's the volume of the industry. A reasonably sized media house, at least at the state level or the regional level, would make anywhere around 400 to 500 CR in a year top line. So that's the average revenue size. Even for the smaller ones at regional levels, would be anywhere around 200 to 300 CR top line, right? So that's the amount of revenue that these guys make, and mostly the kharcha or the spend is around content creation. That's where we come in. That's what we want to take. So let's say 300 CR is the number for the year. If you are able to get 1% of this budget, right, that is 3 CR. If you are able to get 10% of this budget, that is roughly 30 CR. And if we just talk about 1,000 plus broadcaster, which would easily be spending 300 CR, so 1,000 into 300 CR is roughly 300K 1,000 CR amount of money which is getting spent each year by just 1,000 plus registered broadcasters. Forget print, forget digital, right? Now, if we are able to get 1% of this, it is roughly 30,000 CR of the TAM that we are looking at. So that's the bottom up number for India alone. And India is the second largest news market. US is the first, right? So US would logically be double or one and a half of at least this number. So just between India and US, there is an opportunity of roughly 50, 60,000 CR in a year, what we are looking at.
okay. And you feel that with your existing offering, how much of this is possible with the existing offering, and how much more would you be saying that we we are still at the point and maybe 2 on a scale of 0 to 10, and with this I can only get maybe 5% of the number I just spoke about, or 2% of the numbers, and obviously you will have to invest more and more in your own self before you get to that number, or even anything close to a viable number.
So, Koreel, honestly, we've just started, right? I mean, at least in my head, we are not even at one. If we have to reach to the 100 level mark, we're not even at one. There is so much to do. Right now, we have a very, very basic framework which works. And thanks to our clients, it's been adopted as well. But honestly, we are also not satisfied with the kind of product that we are sitting on. We know that we can do a much, much, much better job. And every week, every 15 days, we are doing massive updates to the product, right? And still, we've not been able to achieve what we want to achieve, at least in the MVP stage. I mean, even with MVP, there is so much to do. See, ऊपर ऊपर से लगता है कि बहुत कुछ है, but honestly when you go at the micro level and you want to fix things, and thankfully, as I said, in the news and broadcasting space, most of the problem statements are common. So if you fix it for one, you will easily be able to fix it for many, right? So to identify those smaller problem statements and to fix it is the value that we want to add, and we haven't even started on that part. We still have a very basic level framework. So that's why I say that from between 1 to 100, 0 to 100 journey, we are still at 1. There's a long way to go.
So what are the, I mean, obviously there's a long way to go. So what are the future iterations of this? I'm sure you will not stop at news media. I'm sure there's this whole world of content businesses that could use such an intervention. Or there could be many other iterations of your own product, which could be less B2B focused and more B2C focused. So if you can kind of walk us through that part of how you are thinking as the founder about this.
Absolutely. So, see, today we've cautiously opted not to be B2C. We are specifically opting to be B2B because it's a new technology, right? It can easily be misused. There are enough and more examples out there on the internet where people have literally misused the technology. We don't want to be in that situation. We do not have the correct set of checks and balances in place at scale for the B2C ecosystem. Hence, we are choosing not to go there at all. But yes, in the near future, right now we are at one vertical, right? Okay, why do people need generative AI? Sorry, I'm just deviating a bit just to answer this question.
Absolutely. Please feel free.
Why generative AI, right? The idea of generative AI is okay. The word generative means that it keeps on learning, it keeps on automating, it keeps on becoming better, right? So automation is required to make your life simpler. Now, can automation happen at a very, very blanket level? It's almost impossible. Most of the tools which exist out there are horizontal tools. There are enough and more text to video tools which exist. We are not the only ones on the planet, right? There are a lot. I have a bunch of names in my deck itself, right? But we've never seen them being adopted as a commercial level. Versus whether we Justbaat, we're already live commercially, right? We're making small money, but we are making and we're working with the larger enterprises. Why? Because we've been able to verticalize ourselves. We've been able to focus on a very, very micro level problem, right? So if you operate at a macro level, automation won't make sense. Because if, let's say we are a video creation tool from text, if somebody is selling Kaju versus somebody is selling biscuits versus somebody is selling something else, and somebody wants to do news, these are just different problem statements. If you were to automate every bit of it, it will take a lot of time, and a blanket automation won't work, right? So, which is why we've decided, after observing and trying with a lot of deliberation in our heads, we we realized that verticalization is the only way to go, and which is why we picked up the news vertical, because it has problem at scale, it creates content like crazy, content is the bread and butter, and if you can come in and automate the content creation process, then there would be adoption. And thankfully, so far we've been kind of proven right in a way, right? I mean, proven right is a very strong word, but I mean, we've been able to get to some level of our hypothesis. So news and broadcasting is the first vertical that we're going after. The immediate next vertical that we could probably get to in the next 10 to 12 months or about a year's time, after we have settled down ourselves in this specific vertical, could be the ancillary units of the existing client that we work with. So thankfully, we are working with the large enterprises like TOI, Hindustan Times. They have a news business, they have a lifestyle business, again around content generation and content creation. For example, HT has health charts. Now, Hindustan Times wants to, and typically when a health chart article is written, they also have embedded links within the article, right? So when they talk about hair fall, probably a link of Head and Shoulders will be embedded there. So when you create a video from such a script, can you also embed a, a D2C video or a brand link within the video, so that people while watching the video can also click on the link itself and make a purchase happen. So is the algorithm advanced enough to get a transaction in place? So that's how we learn. So information, then transaction within the existing ecosystem. And then once we are able to establish that, so let's say once we are able to solve for health shots, we can go to 1mg or we can go to Apollo Pharmacy. So each ancillary vertical gets branched out into a vertical. So vertical by vertical, solving micro level use cases, on ground use cases. This is the plan to grow. Immediate verticals that we can go after news could be health, could be e-commerce, or could be prop tech. These are three verticals that we've shortlisted because of the interest that probably we've gotten and the volume that we've seen. We could be wrong, there could be more. But as I said, we are not even thinking about execution right now. Everything is still theory. Probably 1 year down the line is when we start executing for them. And while we're executing for them, what are we building net? We are building a video creation platform which has got beautiful AI editor, which has got beautiful AI generator. Now, these tools can also be used by the end consumers or creators as well at some point in time. So when the algorithms are advanced enough, when we've got enough checks and balances, once we solve for enough use cases like information and transactions, we can also open it up to the creators. Probably after 2 years, 2.5 years, 3 years down the line. So that's the GTM plan that we're looking at. So vertical by vertical, uh, business units, ancillary units, and then eventually branching out to multiple other business units.
Interesting about that because yes, I mean they do have a lot of related areas. But what was very interesting is that towards the in the first half of your previous response, you brought up the human aspect, and as I had said in the beginning of our Q&A, that we would be getting back to that human aspect in some time. So I want to kind of now bring it up because this has been going around with the ethical guardrails around this. A. Secondly, from the point of view of the process itself, you have humans who are at some point of time engaged in the process. But can your product also solve at some point? One of the biggest problems with news today is that of misinformation that or half-baked information that is coming in from the feed. So how do you solve for the ethical part of it and the incompleteness of information? Or is the second part not yet something that is being built for?
No, so we are building for the second part as well, just to start by answering that question. See, the way we are thinking about it is that we are a co-pilot tool. We are never going to take the front lead. We are never going to be the captain of the ship. The captain of the ship is always the human. We are just aiding the human in the process. So let's say whenever an incomplete script is received, the AI will create the script or complete the script, write the sentences. But before we get into the storyboarding or video creation process, that window will be open for an approval. The human will have to click OK, next step button for the algorithm to move to the next step. Of course, he would not have to write the script himself, right? AI will do most of the work for him, but the human has to validate that step before going on to the next step. Similarly, so at every step, we have these guardrails in place to make sure that AI does not create something which is not supposed to be done. Right? Humans have the controlling authority and they can intervene as and when required.
And I see a question in the chat box also related to this. Do you see this idea of enabling editors and content creators being democratized? So I know that you're not building it for democratization as yet, and it's a very specific B2B solution. I think you partially answered this, but if you could give some more context to this question that one of our audiences posed.
No, absolutely. See, as I said, we are going very, very deep. As I said, we literally create custom sets of thousands of words for an LLM, right? Tomorrow, probably a bigger company can also come up with such a solution. But as I said, these custom sets will have to be recreated. The learning curve that we've gotten into ourselves was thanks to the combination of the manual person or the editor plus the machine. Somebody will have to establish this again, right? Not to establish this again and to do it at scale, even if it get democratized, will take some time. Also, let's assume that it happens, right? Still, there will be certain parts of it which will be very, very difficult for a global product or a global language model load, you know, to solve for very specifically for a specific industry, for a specific region. That's where we come in, because whenever a large model or a global company would do something, it would do it at a global level. And we have enough and more examples. For example, Google has tried to democratize a lot of stuff. They have translation engine, probably the best translation engine in place, right? Still, we've got enough and more translation companies out there, right? Similarly, Google has got the best advertising solution in place, right? They literally own 70, 60, 80% of the demand of the planet. Still 20, 30% of the demand comes from beyond Google companies, right? So even if it is democratized by Google or Microsoft, there would still be a certain percentage of the market share which is available out there in the market, which would be open for companies like us to grab, right? Even the deepest penetrations that Google or blanket companies would have had so far historically has not been more than 70 to 60 to 70%. So almost 30, 40, 20% is still open. And for a player like us, if we are able to get to 10% of the market share, we have a win, right? 20% is a dream. So even if it gets democratized, we'll still have a certain play in the market. That's how we are seeing. Of course, the margins will come down, the business model might change, right? We will have to also innovate further, but we are at it, right? We are innovating further. We are ready for the business model to change. We are open. So whenever this happens, we will respond, right? So
And Shaurya, when you engage with a client, this is perhaps my penultimate question because I can see we're running short on time. But when you engage with a client, how deep is your hands-on engagement over there, or do you just deploy it and then you're hands off and you come in only for troubleshoot?
no, absolutely not. So customer success is a function that so business development and customer success is me, right? And it will always be me, you know. so so even with the smallest clients today, we have the liberty to go to their office and sit in their office and to work from there on. But tomorrow we will of course grow, and probably that level of handholding might not happen. But we will always have a product plus service angle to what we do, right? We don't want to become a service company for sure. We are not running a managed service solution. We are not building for a specific client. But when I say product plus service angle, whenever we deploy, we will make sure that the customer success happens. Whether it is done by me personally or we hire people for customer success, but we will always have enough and more account managers or success managers running the show, at least for the enterprise level clients that we have. And for the smaller ones, we will keep on engaging. We can do events, we can do online seminars. There are so much ways to engage people, but customer success is a very, very specific function that we will keep on investing on. So we're very clear on that one.
So that kind of brings me, I think, to the question that everyone wants to ask. What does success look to you in the next 18, 24 months? Where are you taking this company? What is it that's really topmost on your mind and priority right now as you are taking it bigger?
See, right now the topmost priority for me is to get one client to use us end to end, right? For the most of the functions. For example, with Times of India, we started with Navbharat Times, and now we are growing to Maharashtra Times and Times Bangla and Times Gujarati, and then we go to a couple of other regional languages, and then finally we come to Times of India English. That's my goalpost, right? So to mine an account is something that we want to do, and we want to make sure that every team that we work with refers us to the next team. So that's what success is going to be, at least in the short term. We have to mine each account that we are working with. Thankfully, by God's grace, we are working with almost bigger enterprises, at least at this stage. At least for the next couple of months, we will keep on working with such bigger clients. So the idea is to mine them. The idea is to make sure that at least 10, 15, 20% of their processes are happening through Justbaat too, right? This is a new tech. There is a lot of evangelization that is also supposed to happen. Hence, I'm saying, probably 10, 20% in the near future, but in the far distant future, of course, 50, 60% of the processes should happen through our technology. But if 10, 20% happens in the near future over the next 10, 12 months, I think it's a win for us. And then eventually, more and more clients have to be onboarded. The company has to grow. There has to be a target. We have to make sure that at least in the India, MENA, and Southeast Asia region, we are the number one player in the vertical that we operate in. For now, we are in the news and broadcasting vertical, so we have to be the number one player. At least in India, we've been able to achieve that to some extent because at least the 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 bigger media houses are either already working with us or talking to us to start working with us. So that's what we've been able to get to at this point. But the idea is also to go beyond the country very, very quickly. That's where we are.
Fascinating. Thank you so much for your time today, Shaurya, and thank you everyone for joining us.